Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're jumping into some really interesting ideas sort of sparked by content from the Mohammed and Way channel on YouTube.
Yeah, we're going to unpack a pretty unique perspective they have, especially connecting things like, supposed extraterrestrial encounters with traditional Islamic beliefs, specifically about unseen beings.
Exactly. And you, our listener, you probably heard talk about aliens, maybe wondered about it yourself. Mm-hmm. It's a particular Islamic viewpoint on that, focusing really heavily on beings called Jinn.
Mm-hmm. Our mission today is basically to understand that connection they're making. Why Jinn, not aliens from, another planet?
Right. And just to be clear, we're not here to say if it's right or wrong. The goal is to really get into the reasoning, understand why they argue that these encounters people report are actually Jinn, and what that implies within their whole belief system.
Yeah, it's definitely a specific theological take. You'll likely find it quite different from, say, purely scientific explanations or maybe even other spiritual views you've heard.
Okay, so let's get into it. One of the first big things the speaker on the channel hits on is, a rejection of the whole everything comes from aliens idea that's out there.
A strong rejection. They actually use the term jahal.
Ignorance, right?
Yeah, ignorance. They suggest that people who believe that, Allah has sort of left them in that state of misunderstanding.
And the contrast they draw is interesting. Instead of, looking to space for answers, they say true knowledge comes from the prophets.
Right. And that knowledge isn't just trivia. It's about living a life with actual purpose connected to the divine, not just chasing worldly stuff and hoping for the best later on.
They use that analogy, don't they, about hoping for a house in paradise without effort.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They compare it to expecting a house in some made-up place, kokutla they call it, to just appear in this life without you lifting a finger.
So the message is, this world is your chance. Build your spiritual home now through action.
Precisely. It shifts the focus dramatically, doesn't it? From external speculation about aliens to internal purposeful living based on their understanding of religious guidance.
Okay, but here's where it gets really specific to our topic today. While they dismiss the alien origins thing, they do address these unexplained encounters head on.
Yes, and this is the core of it. They flat out state that what people often describe as aliens, beings from other planets, spaceships, the whole deal, are in fact Jinn.
Not visitors from space, but beings from a parallel realm, according to Islamic tradition.
That's their assertion. They're saying these aren't extraterrestrials, they're Jinn, beings that Islam has, always acknowledged exist alongside us.
And they don't just say Jinn exist, they get quite specific. They mention Jinn being present, right here in our world, even in people's homes.
Mm-hmm. And they even associate them with negative experiences, using the term molestation. It's a pretty direct claim about Jinn interacting, sometimes harmfully, with humans.
So how do they explain this? Where does this understanding come from?
Well, according to their belief, this knowledge comes directly from Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. They believe he brought a complete understanding of reality, which includes the nature of Jinn, their capabilities, and their interactions with us.
Right. So within this framework, the Jinn aren't a new explanation. They're part of the known, unseen world described long ago.
Exactly. They see the knowledge brought by the Prophet as this comprehensive inheritance. It's meant to equip believers with understanding, really, from the beginning of time to the end days.
And this knowledge isn't just theoretical. They believe it offers actual solutions or explanations for, pretty much anything happening on Earth.
Yeah, it's presented as this complete toolkit. It contrasts with what they see as maybe frustration in people who just wait for miracles directly from Allah without understanding how those miracles or that divine help manifests.
So how does it manifest, according to them?
They link it back very strongly to Prophet Muhammad. They believe Allah's miracles and support are channeled, in a sense, through the Prophet's reality. Experiencing that comes through loving him.
Which brings us to another huge theme for them. Love and association.
Absolutely central. They believe that people who follow this path, who genuinely love the reality of Prophet Muhammad, tend to experience, almost miraculous lives. Less difficulty, unexpected provision, what they call rizq.
So there's a direct link between this love and, divine favor.
That's the idea. That Allah is with those who have this deep love for the Prophet. And it extends beyond just the Prophet himself. They stress loving the righteous figures too, the Siddiqun, the truthful, the Shahada, witnesses or martyrs, and the Salihin, the righteous ones.
And if you don't have those connections,
they suggest it can actually hinder things like Prayers might not be answered as readily. Difficulties might persist because those connections act as channels, you could say.
They even mention subtle things like levels of the heart.
The tafel qalb, yeah. It points to this belief in a very intricate inner spiritual landscape within each person, influenced by subtle energies.
And how do you cultivate that? How do you access these deeper levels?
This is where the concept of having a guide, a sheikh in the lineage, comes in. Someone whose spiritual connection goes back, ideally, to the Sahaba, the Prophet's companions.
Through that connection, you receive what? Teachings, energy.
Both, really. They talk about receiving spiritual fires and teachings through these guides, and that loving these figures, the sheikh, the companions, the Prophet, can literally open your heart.
Open it to what?
To allow Allah's names and attributes, these divine qualities, to continuously sort of dress the soul, radiating blessings outward.
So that connects to baraka, the blessing.
Exactly. They believe this baraka flows partly because of the presence and influence of these spiritually elevated individuals. It underscores their teaching about making something in your life holy, having a central goal.
And that goal should be
centered around glorifying Prophet Muhammad. They give examples like attending and supporting mawlids.
Celebrations of the Prophet's birth.
Right. And zik, remembrance of God. Spreading the teachings, giving charity to the poor, but doing it all in the Prophet's name, making that connection explicit.
It's a very focused path. They also touch on practices like wudu, ablution before prayer.
Yeah, and they give it a deeper meaning. It's not just washing hands and face. True wudu, they say, links to inner purity.
How so?
They actually get quite specific, mentioning the cleanliness of one's private parts as being crucial. Yeah. They present this as a kind of key that unlocks sincerity and allows for divine opening.
A key. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And they mention the miswak, the toothstick, in a similar way. Seems like a small thing, but they say it has a profound reality connected to the heart's energy.
So the broader point is that within Islam, from this perspective, even seemingly simple rituals or items hold these hidden, deeper spiritual keys.
That seems to be the idea, that there are layers of understanding beyond just the surface actions, keys to unlocking spiritual realities.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up for today. We've really dug into a very specific viewpoint from the Mohammedan Way channel. They reinterpret these widely discussed alien encounters.
Right, saying they're not extraterrestrial, they're actually Jinn beings already understood within Islamic teachings to share our reality, in a sense.
And this whole interpretation is deeply woven into their core emphasis on the love and glorification of Prophet Muhammad as the central path to spiritual growth, understanding, and even divine help.
Yeah, it's definitely a distinct perspective you've heard today. It tackles modern questions about the unknown, but uses the vocabulary and concepts from its own long-standing tradition. It's certainly thought-provoking whether it aligns with your own views or not.
Absolutely. Yeah. It really shows how different belief systems can frame and make sense of things we don't fully understand.
Mm-hmm. Which leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it? How powerful is interpretation? How does a particular spiritual framework shape how we see the unknown? What does it mean when an ancient tradition offers an explanation for something as contemporary as, well, the alien phenomenon? Lots to mull over there.